This week, Mulele and I meet Johnny O'Brien, a professional basketball player who has started his own comics publisher, Noir Caesar, publishing manga-style stories starring characters of color. Then Mulele and I review a couple of Noir Caesar's series. First, just a reminder that you can help this podcast by making your Amazon purchases via deconstructingcomics.com/Amazon and make that your bookmark for future purchases. Deconstructing Comics earns a bit of money from your purchase that helps us keep the show going. We really appreciate your support. This is Tim.
Hello.
And this is Deconstructing Comics. Welcome to Deconstructing Comics. This is Tim in Tokyo with Mulele here in Tokyo also. How are you doing?
Good. And you?
Okay. Yeah, this is actually unusual that Mulele is on for Deconstructing Comics and not Critiquing Comics. So actually, Mulele and I recently went to downtown Tokyo and did an interview with Johnny O'Brien, who is a professional basketball player and has started his own comics company. Specifically, it's manga-style comics, where he really is into manga, but he wanted to produce manga with characters of color. So, you know, we all want to see ourselves in our comics, right? So, So let's listen to the interview, and then Mulele and I are going to come back and discuss a couple of the series that his company is putting out. Okay, so Mulele and I are here at the Palace Hotel with Johnny O'Brien, right? O'Brien, who is a professional basketball player and is, if I understand correctly, he's kind of the CEO of Noir Caesar Entertainment, which is putting out a lot of comics that are basically in manga style. So why don't we start out talking about that? Well, actually, I want to ask you about basketball first. So you were on like at least 3 different NBA teams. And now you're playing for the EuroLeague in Israel?
Yes, actually, I just finished. I'm a free agent as of right now. So.
All right. So, how was that? I didn't know there was a EuroLeague. I certainly didn't know there was a team in Tel Aviv.
Yeah. It was amazing. Actually, EuroLeague is the second best league in the world. Very competitive. Guys make a ton of money. It's actually, in terms of just like atmosphere, I think it's a lot more intense than the NBA. Wow. In terms of, I guess I could compare it to like soccer in terms of how intense the fans are. But overall, man, it was a great experience. So.
Okay. So then your road games, you'd be going to other European countries, right?
Yes.
I know it's big in Italy. But
Italy, Spain, Greece, so we kind of been all over playing games. And you get to, for me, who didn't spend much time in Europe, I got a chance to see Europe and travel and play, so it was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Did you encounter a lot of manga culture or comics? I mean, comics are really big in some European countries, but I'm not sure about manga style comics.
You know what? I tried because I'm a manga reader, manga fan, so I tried to try my best to kind of locate a manga shop. In Israel, it was pretty. I wouldn't say huge, but it was. It definitely had 1 or 2, kind of manga spots that people hung out at and, read books. So.
Okay. So what inspired you to start Noir Caesar Entertainment?
Just to be honest, man, I grew up watching Toonami, and Toonami, growing up, Toonami was like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Cartoon Network, but Cartoon Network had this segment around like 3 p.m. to like 6 p.m. They showed nothing but anime, and Disney on the weekends had a segment called JetX, where they from like 6 a.m. in the morning to like noon, Saturday and Sunday they show anime, Digimon, more kid-friendly anime. So both of those kind of growing up, watching Toonami, watching Yu Yu Hakusho, watching, Gundam Mobile Fighter, watching Hunter x Hunter, watching, different Dragon Ball, Digimon. So I kind of preferred anime, and it's, the way the characters were, the backstories. I kind of preferred those over traditional Western cartoons. And as I got older, started watching more and more mature anime, and just kind of fell in love with it. And when I got older and I got to the NBA, I reached out to my high school teacher, said, I want to start a publishing company for characters of color. And I think that it wasn't enough characters of color in anime and manga, for whatever reason. And when I started Noir Caesar, I was just surprised of how many people agreed, so.
Yeah, well, of course, manga was, used to be basically just in Japan, the readership, and I guess nobody really thought to put many characters of color in.
Yeah.
But now that it has an international audience, it's maybe a little bit like how Hollywood is putting a lot of Chinese people in movies now because they're trying to appeal to the Chinese market.
Definitely. I don't think it's like anybody's fault. I just think they create what they see every day.
Yeah.
And I think my job was to create, as a fan of the medium, my job was to tell stories that, from a Western point of view, but add the influence from manga and anime, in my books and my stories. So.
Okay. In the off season, you probably have plenty of time to work on this, but how do you juggle it during basketball season?
To be honest, man, we fly a lot. We have a lot of downtime. Anytime I'm not sleeping or with my family, with my kids, or at the gym, I try to, because I actually create a lot of the concepts that you see. Like I created Exogenesis, I created Primus 7, I created Playboy. I don't have time to like sit down and write the scripts out or draw it. But the natural, the same kind of. I think creating and coming up with these stories, it gives me the same feeling that I get when I play basketball. So I kind of use it as like a hobby, or like a way to vent or just kind of get away, unwind it. So.
So how does that work? You're creating some of the ideas for the comics, but other people are writing and drawing them. So how do you work with those other people?
So through various conference calls, Skype. I'm very involved in all of the process in terms of writing, drawing. Obviously, I'm not an artist, but correcting the artist and just trying to be involved as much as I can at every stage. So.
So, for example, tell us one of the ideas that you came up with and how that process worked.
So, Exogenesis. Exogenesis is probably one of our most popular titles. The artist is well known. And Exogenesis pretty much, it's a story about this kid. He grows up in Harlem, inner city. And it's a story about how inner city kids with sports talent, gets sometimes get manipulated by people who may seem like mentor, coach, kind of mentor figures. And so I guess the process worked with, I would think of the idea, I would draft up a treatment, send it over to a writer. Writer gets back, he corrects the treatment, we talk about it, and then he starts scripting. I review the scripts kind of when I can, obviously with basketball, and then I get back to him as quick as I can, and then he sends it over to the artist, and the artist starts drawing, and that's kind of how it happens. So.
And how do you find these people to write and draw them?
Actually, man, as the company has grown, a lot of people reach out to us, want to be a part of it, and we cycle through their portfolio, and if we like some, we have them draw and things like that. So.
Okay, and I wasn't sure if there were paper editions. I knew it was on the web, but now you handed us some paper books here. So So how long have these been coming out? When did you first start putting out books?
Probably about a year and a half ago. Primus 7 was our first book that came out, and then because we drop we kind of drop chapters as they come out and digitally, and then once they're all done, we kind of print it and then sell them. So that's kind of how it worked. And Primus 7 was our first manga to actually finish, and then everything else kind of followed that. So
okay, so what brought you to Japan this time?
actually, here for my wedding anniversary with my wife. We are both huge anime fans, so we both said we wanted to go to Japan at some point. So here we are, and also just some business meetings here and there, trying to publish in Japan, get my stuff translated and published, and working on some other things as well. So
okay, yeah. Well, one of the interviews I saw with you talked about. I guess you came. Is this your first trip to Japan?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so maybe it was later than you'd intended it to be.
Yeah.
You were planning to come the end of last year, but you mentioned talking to some publishers. So, how does the site make money? Is it mainly from selling the paper books? Do you have...
we make money through cons, and right now we're actually touring. We have a 3-city tour. You can watch some of the videos on YouTube where we just left New York. We went to New York, had a pop-up event. We sell clothing, we sell merchandise, so posters, figurines, books, shirts, hoodies, and that's kind of how we make money. But digitally we give everything for free, and once the customer gets familiar with the project, he becomes a fan, and and he pays. So
now this is a topic that I'm kind of interested in, is deciding what to put on your merchandise, because a mistake that I, among many others, have made is just putting my logo on stuff, and people aren't really interested in that because they have to more identify with the thing on the product. So how do you go about, or I don't know if you're involved in the decision exactly, but deciding what goes on the merchandise?
I think to attest to what you just said, I think that that's the reason we make it free, because I feel like if you're familiar with a project, if you feel invested in it, then no matter what we put on it, you're a fan of it. So I think it's kind of our method. We give you great content for free, and then when we put out the printed volumes, when we put out the posters, you're so wrapped up, engulfed in that character that you can kind of dig it. But for us, man, we also, another big part of Noir that I didn't speak on is that I'm a huge fan of like streetwear, sneakers, hip hop, and we wanted to kind of sprinkle that into the company in terms of just like some of the pieces that you see, are not just like screen printed T-shirts. They're like really well thought out, crafted pieces, that you can wear. You can wear in public, you can wear it to a restaurant, you can wear it to a bar, you can wear wherever, so.
Now, you mentioned Exogenesis, and they're not playing basketball, it's more of kind of a fighting league, but is this sort of drawn from your basketball experience?
Yeah. So, I guess the plot of it, pretty much, and just seeing how, if you follow NCAA, it's a whole big thing of like, should athletes be paid, or should, are kids being taken advantage of by the NCAA, and that's kind of what I wanted to show was, not necessarily the NCAA, but I think the villain in the story represents the NCAA, and it shows how like this kid who has this talent and comes from this environment that's not healthy, single mother, he comes in and he kind of tells the mother, hey, your kid has a great talent, send him to me, I'll invest in him, I'll get him where he needs to be. But in the end, you see how he ends up manipulating the kid and for his own good, and that's kind of what Exogenesis is. So
I see. Do you have any plans for any comics that actually involve basketball?
Actually, I do.
Okay,
I can show you.
Yeah, I did see there was a rugby comic up there, but yeah, no basketball.
So actually, it's actually being worked on right now. So this is a project we have called Degenerates, and this pretty much is I want it to be an anime, but the manga is also coming out as well. So here's kind of
the team members.
So pretty much the story. The story is pretty much, it's called Degenerates, and the story is this old star basketball player. He's down on his luck now, and he goes to coach this school for troubled teenagers, and pretty much the school of you see these kids of how like they go from like, oh, so first of all, let me take a step back. The school, it's his first year being able to play in the public school city league. It's like the first year of them really having a basketball team, and so they have no budget, no money, and you see how these kids go from like all these kids from different backgrounds, white, Asian, black, whatever, and they all come from troubled backgrounds, and so now the coach has to find a way to keep these kids out of trouble off the court, but also keep them focused on the court. And also he has to gain their respect, because to this point they're like kids that that doesn't respect authority. And pretty much you see these kids go from like thugs to like rock stars. They start winning. Girls start going crazy over them. They're making highlight plays, and they become known as like the bad boys of like their city league, and it's called Degenerates because like obviously there's just a bunch of juveniles, and they're they come from these troubled backgrounds, and I wanted to tell a story of like a lot of black athletes anyway come from environments like that, and a lot of times sports are our way of getting out of those environments. So that's what I want to do. I want to tell a story of not even just blacks, but just whites, Mexicans, whoever, Asians, who come from troubled background in sports. And also I wanted to tell a story of how sports connect us all, no matter your background. And that's what it did for me. Basketball has connected me with, white coaches, Mexican teammates, Asian teammates, Israeli teammates, whatever, that, now they're like my best friends for life. And that's what I wanted to do with Degenerates, to tell how like these kids from all these different troubled backgrounds can come together, win something, and change their life around. So
sure, yeah. If you're in any kind of intense situation with other people, you
definitely. So
get drawn together. Sure. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I do have a couple actually, more on the technical side of your business. So as far as the publishing goes, you put it up online for free first in chapters. What's your schedule for that?
So pretty much we just kind of drop as the artist finishes, which will normally be in between 2 weeks to a month. A month be the longest.
So how many pages do you drop?
So normally they're between like 20 and 40.
Oh, okay.
Each chapter.
It's quite a lot.
Yeah. So each chapter is between 20 and 40 pages, and then but we also have we create a lot of original stories, but we also have we have a project called Shinto, and Shinto is from an artist in Spain. He has 2 full volumes, so we published that for him. We have a project called Monarchs from an artist in the States. It isn't finished like Shinto, but we published that for him. So as he finishes, we put it out. And a lot of times that, like for projects like Monarch, a lot of those artists works full-time jobs, so they can't just dedicate themselves to drawing, being a full-time manga artist. So we kind of get those like as we can.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it works.
I see. And on the name of the company, is that a reference to Black Caesar exploitation film?
Nah, it's So I grew up a huge like Julius Caesar fan. Just a way of like the way he was able to navigate and conquer so much land. And Noir obviously means black, so I wanted to show like, okay, well, that's what I want to do in the anime and manga industry. I want to start this company, and I want to be a force. I want to come in and I want to carve out my own territory in it. So
comics empire.
Yeah. So I call it the Noir Caesar.
Okay, that does kind of lead into my last question. What is your goal or your vision for the future of your company?
So my goal is to create something that. So when I grew up, I was 12 years old. I was watching Naruto, learning about ramen, learning Japanese, watching DBZ, and being a 12-year-old black kid, I could learn about Japanese culture through anime. I could never, obviously I could never afford to go to Japan or whatever. So for me, I want to create something that a 12-year-old Japanese kid sitting at home can learn about a black kid growing up in Harlem and say, damn, that's super cool. I never knew that. So I want to create something that tells diverse stories, tell quality stories, put out quality, and I want to be a part of the culture. I want to help the culture. Obviously, anime and manga is something created here for the people here, and it just, obviously everybody, it expanded. So for me, I want to be inspired by that and help the culture grow as well through, introducing other characters and other stories. So
it seems to me that there's quite a correlation between hip hop and anime in that regard. Hip hop starting in New York and then branching out into the world.
Yeah.
Anime doing the same from Japan.
Definitely, and I think there's an argument. It's never this argument with hip hop, but in anime, you see a lot, especially when we go to cons. We found it funny that and it's kind of why we took a year off from going to cons, and we said that we would just go on tour, because when we go to cons, we were finding that the typical otakus would skip our table, but our table would be packed, literally 30, 40, 50 people, and it would all be just people of color, and rarely you will see one or two, other people stop through, and then we would have panels at these cons, and it would be 500 people, no sitting room, no standing room, and it would be just people of color flocking to, and I was like, it's crazy that I go to Anime Expo, it's hundreds of thousands of people, but we're only selling to 1% of the cons. So I said, you know what? So I said, what I wanted to do is I didn't want to ask for a seat at your table. I realized that if I can come to LA to Anime Expo, pay however much to get a booth, well, I can just come here and do my own event. So we went to New York. What was it? It's 3 weeks ago. We went to New York, and we were nervous because we didn't even know. We okay, we're going to go to New York, we're going to rent a space, we're going to do a pop-up. And literally, so many people showed up, and we had a panel, and it was crazy. And again, it just goes to show you, something like this needs to be in the culture. And I think that big companies like Crunchyroll, or not even just people often skip over, there's a whole market that will pay if you put it out there, so.
So I know you've been hoping to get anime of these made. How is that coming?
So right now, it's been quite a task. I think that trying to, and that's another reason why we did the tour as well. The question that obviously we have the quality, we have the following, and then whenever we're pitching, we always get the same thing. It's well, we don't know if we can sell it to people in Japan, and I don't really know either because I'm not from here. So or we don't know how we can market or how we can sell it. And I for me, it's just how you sell everything else. You just put it out and see what happens. So for us, we wanted to do a tour to show, okay, I can take these products anywhere in the country, and they're going to sell. I could take it to New York on the drop of a hat, and 1,000 people will show up in a weekend. So to me, that seems like it could sell. So, but it's been a process. I think for us, man, we just got to keep trying to knock the door down. So.
So yeah, who would make them? Would it be some company in America that would make the anime?
I mean, I guess Netflix, Hulu, whoever, same people that distribute every other anime. So.
Sure. Okay. Did you participate in San Diego this year?
Comic-Con?
Yeah.
No, we didn't. We actually, I don't know if we had a small anime produced called Primus 7. It was a trailer. I don't know if you got a chance to see that. And that little clip actually is what got us our following and got people kind of turning their.
So you put it out on social media?
Well, actually, we went to Anime NYC.
And showed it there.
And we showed it there, and then it went viral, got like 1 million views on Facebook, like 50,000 views on YouTube, and I think it's around like it's probably like 2 years old, 3 years old. So yeah, this we created like a little 1-minute teaser for Primus 7. This kind of what helped our company grow in the beginning. So yeah, that was a little clip that we did.
That was produced in America? Or?
No, it was done by JM Studio, JM Animation. They did the Boondocks and
Okay.
the Avatar, actually.
But they're based in Japan then?
No, they're based in South Korea.
South Korea, okay.
Okay. So besides your own company's products, what other like anime or manga are you paying attention to right now?
I just recently, like a couple weeks ago, started watching Fire Force.
Okay.
Which I think is super cool. My wife loves Demon Slayer. I have yet to watch it because I only watch dub. So, but the Promised Neverland is amazing. That's one of my top shows. My dark horse show, like I don't even think people know what it is, but it's called Michigo and Hachi. That's one of my favorite animes. Erased is amazing. My Hero Academia, obviously, everybody watches that.
Okay, I'm aware of that one.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you said you're without a team at the moment, but how much longer do you expect to play basketball?
I don't know. I guess until I don't really want to anymore. I don't know. 35, 36, something like that. Obviously I created North. When I'm done, I can transition into something else that I love to do.
So when you retire, will you be just doing this company full time?
Yeah, that's what I hope. I hope I can get it in 10 years to be, something I can transition into doing. Running and making money. So.
Do you think maybe you'd get more involved in like actually writing stories then?
I do actually. When I'm done, I want to be a filmmaker. I want to, go to school, learn how to. I want to go to school, learn how to write screenplays correctly. I want to learn how to get behind the camera, direct.
But just as far as the screenwriting and the filmmaking, I would say this, and it's not to offer advice to you or anything like that, because that's some pompous shit. But Steven Spielberg kind of just did it and went his way. Yeah. And there's a shift in his work that you can see. Sometime after Amistad, maybe.
Yeah.
And people talk about that being because of film school.
Yeah.
He went to film school after that. I kind of feel it wrecked him. I would say you're well on your way with the work that you're doing now.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
When I say school, I just mean in terms of I just think maybe it's some technical things that they can teach. Obviously
in that sense, yeah.
And obviously with directing, I know it's. I don't know if I could ever just go direct the movie. So for me, I'm always kind of just do things how I do them, but I just kind of want to learn the foundation of things. Mm-hmm. So, but I definitely agree with your advice.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Good luck with your company.
Thank you.
Coming up, Mulele and I review 2 series from Noir Caesar, Exogenesis and Primus 7. First, thanks to all our patrons at patreon.com/deconcomics, more classic episodes of Deconstructing Comics have been unlocked, and I'm releasing them at the rate of 1 per week in reverse order. This week I'll be republishing episode 96, in which Brandon and I discuss Matt Kint's Super Spy. The classic episodes can be found on our Facebook and Twitter feeds by clicking on the earliest months listed on the left sidebar at deconstructingcomics.com or in publicly available posts on our Patreon page. Check out all our goals and help us reach them at patreon.com/deconcomics. When you watched Batman as a kid, you enjoyed the colorful heroes and villains, the text sound effects on the screen, the thrill of watching a heroic crime fighter escaping from death traps and taking down bad guys. But the show was devised to interest adults, too. What did you miss as a kid? Sexual innuendo.
The penguin's too small for me.
Closeted gay characters.
I like that cape, Batman.
Freudian death traps.
Has the giant clam really swallowed Robin?
Police incompetence.
Bruce Wayne is a millionaire playboy. Hardly a secret identity for Batman.
Whether you're a kid or an adult, there's something to like about our favorite Caped Crusader. Tim and Paul dig for the deeper meanings under the Batmania every other Thursday. What's the podcast's name?
To the Batpoles. To the Batpoles. To the Batpoles.
In tomorrow's episode, we discuss the final two-parter of the Batman series featuring Shame. Okay, so we are back, and you've heard the interview, and now we're going to talk about a couple of the books. So, actually, as I mentioned during the interview there, he had handed us some of the paper books, which Mulele has. I was reading online, and the series that we chose on NoirCaesar.com were Primus 7 and Exogenesis. This Genesis is spelled Genassys. He was pronouncing it Exogenesis. It looks kind of like Genesius or something, but
Yeah, that's the way I was pronouncing it. But what he said, exogenesis?
yeah, Genesis, just like, a beginning.
Right. Okay. Well, exogenesis is the name of the team or the sport, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, let's get into this one.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of a fighting sport. This is taking place somewhat in the future. I think it said 2075 was the year.
Yeah, something like that.
And this young guy named Darius, I think maybe he's in high school, and he keeps getting into fights and he gets in trouble, but then this promoter steps in and he sees all this potential in him and is going to make Darius a star of this exogenesis.
Okay, hold on a
fighting.
second, right there. I have to admit, this is as far as I read.
Okay.
It's the first chapter of the book. So just so far in this book, what did you think of it?
Yeah, so I read everything that's on the website which is up to chapter 8. And as Johnny said in the interview, this comic is sort of meant to suggest what happens with the NCAA, where college athletes are recruited and play for the school, but they don't get paid for it, and some of the bigger schools rake in all kinds of TV money, and there's been a big debate about that in recent years about if the students are getting taken advantage of. And yeah, so in this story, it's still kind of early in the story, obviously, chapter 8, but you're already getting a feeling like the promoter doesn't necessarily have Darius's best interests at heart. And he's had his first big professional fight, which I'm not going to spoil what happens in it. But it's one thing that really struck me about these comics is how they've really gotten the manga, especially shonen manga style, down.
Yeah.
On this one, I should say, so the idea was Johnny's. The artist is Nicholas Draper Ivey. The writers are Nicholas Draper Ivey and Trey McIntosh. But just sort of the pacing of it and the kinds of panels and the way that action is shown, and it felt like a good. They had a lot of the tropes down.
Yeah.
Sometimes maybe a little off, but most of the time I felt pretty much like something that would come out of Japan.
I didn't feel that it was off so much as I thought it worked within its own boundaries. I mean, it didn't break any of its own rules, and even if it does skew a little bit different from Japanese comics, for me, there was no problem within it. How can I say, within its own architecture.
Okay. I guess I say sometimes it was a little off because there were one or two places where something got a full-page panel, and I wasn't quite sure that was necessary. I wasn't quite sure why it took up a whole page, but yeah, most of the time it seemed fine to me. And the story is fairly interesting to me. I don't know. I'm not the intended audience, just in terms of my age, but because it tends to pause on the action, or the fight was a little bit long and drawn out, I thought, but yeah, I think it's pretty good. Occasionally the art got a little too sketchy, I thought. Although on the whole, I think it improves from the beginning to Chapter 8. It is getting better, I think, art-wise.
Yeah. I felt something similar, just flipping through towards the back section. But the thing is, for the artwork, the art style itself, I thought the artist might be a bit of a speed painter, which is why it seems a little sketchy and rough at first. Maybe, and I have no idea, but maybe that is kind of the methodology that he's going from. So his idea of detail and accent were secondary to just getting the basic forms. Also, some of it was a little bit too tight. Some of the shots were a little too far, given the size of the page. And also some of the font sizes were a little too small.
Yes.
So I was straining a lot in the first chapter to read some of the stuff. I'm an old man at this point.
Right. Well, I mean, I noticed that in reading it in the PDF, I could zoom in as much as I wanted to, and still some of those word balloons were so tiny.
Yeah, it seemed to get a little bit better towards the later chapters, from what I could see. But just I thought the setup of the story, the introduction to the characters, the wants and needs of the characters were set up pretty well. I mean, it might be missing one or two beats for the main character and why he doesn't want to join a gang, or why he's willing to fight and go to jail for that to avoid being in the gang, when the gang will have him join and then get busted and go to jail anyway. It's a little bit rough there, but I generally could understand and sympathize with the main character, and was actually prepared to read on. I just did not have the time for such a monstrous book. This book is nearly 300 pages.
How many chapters are in it?
8.
Okay, so everything that's on the website is in there.
Yeah, so you went through 300 pages, and I went through about 50.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I found it recommendable. It was pretty interesting.
Definitely, and you can see a clear parallel between sports business and what's happening in this comic, and it's a personal story that Johnny O'Brien knows intimately. It kind of feels like he's telling his own story here. So there's a lot compelling here, and it's well drawn, well written, and is personal. So I would definitely recommend it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. Now, on the other book, Mulele is the one who's read way more of it than I have. The same issue, Time. This is Primus 7, created by Johnny O'Brien and Marcus Johnson and Vaughn Alexander. Our artist is Sebastian Riera, and writer is Corey Mikel. And, yeah, this art style... is clearer. That was the first thing I noticed. Really sharply drawn art.
Mm-hmm.
And this is... Well, you read more of it. Why don't you explain what it is?
Okay. This is a story of two brothers who who lost their father in a war, apparently with their uncle. Basically, the uncle kills the father, and the younger brother witnesses it. The older brother does not, but they both kind of deal with the death of their father in different ways while trying to evade capture by the uncle's troops, and kind of exist in this kind of post-apocalyptic, I don't know, subculture. Mm-hmm. And that's about as far as the first book goes. Basically, the story of the book is that they're trying to leave this city. They're trying to get out, and they need someone to get them out of the city because they've been busted again. Basically, they want to go to a coyote to get them out. But they need money to pay her to get him out. So they rob basically a mob bank, possibly the banker for the uncle, to get the money to pay the coyote to get them out of the city. And it without spoiling how it goes, there are a lot of moving parts to this. What did you think of what you read so far?
I didn't quite connect with this one as much. I'm not quite sure why. It might have just been a matter of taste, but I don't know, because I'm just not real kind of into this post-apocalyptic stuff. It just seemed really dark. And sort of hopeless, I guess, reading the first... What did I read? The prologue in chapter 1, basically.
Yeah.
Where they're trying to get out, and they've got these robot cops after them, and didn't seem to be a way out. But I mean, I think it's well done, and some people would like this better than I would, I think.
You said that the artwork was clearer in this one. I have to agree that visually it's clear, but the storytelling isn't quite as clear here. Mm-hmm. And this was one of the major problems that I had with the art, although I think the art by itself is quite beautiful and is quite emotional, whereas the previous book, Exogenesis, lacks sometimes an emotional depth in the beginning anyway. Mm-hmm. I see by the later fights they begin to step up the emotional content quite a bit. But in this one, all of the emotions are there from the beginning. The other problem that this book has, though, Primus 7, is that the writing doesn't set up anything. It just kind of throws you in the middle of the situation every time. And as soon as you start to figure out what's going on, it switches to another in the middle of a situation scene. and so it's constantly keeping you off balance, and it keeps throwing so much stuff at you. And there's flashbacks to kind of pull you to give you extra information as to why this is important. And the thing is, you can't have a payoff without a setup, and there are no setups in this story. And so you're just kind of, even Die Hard has setups. Because when John McClane takes off his shoes, it's because someone in the airplane told him that it helps you get over the feeling of flying, get over the tension of flying. So he tries it, it works. Now he's barefoot, and the action starts. So he's barefoot for the rest of the film. And that causes a whole bunch of problems. There's a knock-on effect. But here, there's no knock-on effect. There is nothing that happens in one scene that leads to another scene, unless it's of monumental importance, like the father dies. And from that, a lot of things happen. But as far as how the characters go, there's really nothing. So like in the first chapter, the younger brother brings home some prostitutes because he wants to get his groove on. And then a moment later, the brother and he are fighting about the situation and kick the girls out. And then the cops show up. But there's nothing to insinuate that the girls were connected to the cops. And I think it would have been much more interesting if they were, that they were the reason they got busted. But there's no connective tissue there. Mm-hmm. So I feel like there's lots of missed opportunities in the writing with this one. And because there are no setups and no connective tissues between scenes, it's a lot of jarring information, new information, and you're never allowed to just sit and settle with the characters unless the characters are fighting amongst themselves. And some of those scenes actually kind of worked, but they didn't necessarily resolve the issue that they had or further the plot so much. It was more a fight for the sake of having something to look at. And I think because of these things, it hurts the readability of the comic, which I think is the issue that you were having, and for me as well.
Yeah, I'm looking at this part of chapter 1 where I just had a little trouble following it, where one boy is looking out the window and he says, "Who the hell are these guys?" And the older guy who's with him, was that the friend of their family somehow?
Yeah.
Is saying, "Oh, we'll discuss it later." But well, then it's these robot cops, and they come in. I'm not sure why they weren't alarmed by who was out there before.
Yeah.
But they start shooting, and one of the brothers apparently is blasting them from his hands.
Yeah.
And then it's coming out of the wall, but I wasn't quite sure where that wall was or what in relation to where they were. I was a little confused about kind of geography here.
Yeah, it's another problem. You have to be very, very careful, especially if you're going to invest a lot of page real estate and close-ups and medium shots of the characters interacting. The geography of the scene has to be set. I mean, it has to be set in stone. That's why a lot of people use an establishing shot, and why other artists have rules like, if you have a page that doesn't have a full figure character on it, then you're not doing your job. One of the things, it's not that, you have to draw a gorgeous full figure person on each page. It's that you have to really show something more than just a close-up of the face. And that's one way of making sure that happens. Mm-hmm. So in this book, I think the writer and the artist both get a little bit lost in what exactly they need to set up and how it's supposed to lead to other things. So everything just seems kind of out of the blue. It's like they're writing and drawing, but whatever they write and draw on page 1, they don't know what's coming in page 2, so they don't set up anything. When they get to page 2, they've forgotten what's in page 1. It's a little bit harsh to say it that way. It's maybe not quite as bad as that, but it just seems to me that there's a lot they need to work through as a team to kind of get that stuff going. They're not quite there yet. Mm-hmm. And the story that they're telling is incredibly long and complex. Like from the jump, it's just... And so when you come to these two characters, the main question that has to be kind of shown at the beginning is, what do these people want? And what we're shown in the first chapter is that the older brother wants to sit in a dark room and brood, and the younger brother wants to get laid. And these are fine for the moment, but they're not the overall wants or needs of the characters going forward. There's no reason for me to follow the interest of a guy who wants to sit in a dark room and brood. So what is it they're trying to do here? Now, it seems in each chapter as they go through, people are putting great importance on the value of their lives, but we don't know why. They don't know why either. But every time they're about to die, someone jumps in and saves them. So this removes agency from the main characters, from the protagonists, these two brothers. Because they have no agency, and they have no wants aside from those simple things, it's really hard to get into any sort of okay, why am I reading this? And so basically the setup is not clearly established, so the follow through is weak. And when you come to the end of the book, this is the first volume. When you get to the end of the first volume, there's a subplot involving the uncle and some god that he prays to for power, having a conversation about the god taking physical form again. It was a little bit hard to understand, a little hard to follow. And at the end, that god becomes reborn. And that's where they end. And so this prior to the beginning from the beginning of this, there's kind of a mention of this power, but it's not given any sort of like presence. It's kind of like Ki in Hokuto no Ken, but nothing is established about it. It's just kind of you're to assume that it's like, they have this electric power that kind of flashes through their bodies and makes them powerful, but you don't know that it's actually power given by some divine entity that has no form until the end of the book. There's nothing to suggest that that's where we're going with this. But when we arrive there, it's like, what the fuck is this? What? What happened to the brothers? We were in the middle of a battle, and suddenly we're now over here. And so it's a jarring shift, which brings you to this character being kind of born, whom we didn't know was coming and don't know the purpose of. And so, and there are no stakes in this character being born. So the comic leads to nothing and has no decisive goal set up at the beginning. So it's kind of like, if I could put it in very, very simple sports terms, it's like a really long game of basketball with no hoops.
Okay. Well, that doesn't sound very interesting.
It does pain me to say that this book does not work for me when Exogenesis works so much better and actually does a lot right. Not just in comparison to this book, but in general, on its own merits. It does a lot right and has a lot going for it. This one seems to be very unclear. So I can't recommend Primus 7.
Yeah. Exogenesis is definitely better story-wise. And art-wise in some ways. The storytelling, maybe, as opposed to the sort of clarity of the line.
Yeah, I can understand where people want to see just clearly drawn, clearly defined characters, that Primus 7 would probably be the one they're more attracted to. But for the storytelling, Exogenesis is a much better book. Although I understand why the art might irk a few people if it seems just a little bit fuzzy. But the composition of shots, the arrangement of panels, it's all a little bit more interesting. There's a little bit more going on in that one than in Primus 7. Primus 7 seems to be a little more all over the place with its style.
Okay. So if you want to take a look at these comics, they're at noircaesar.com, along with some other books from Noir Caesar. So you can take a look at those for free and then buy the print books if you want to. So, Mulele, thank you.
You're welcome. But I have one little last bit.
Okay.
So, about meeting...
Johnny.
Yeah, Johnny O'Brien, and talking to him about his company and what he's trying to do with these projects. I did see a lot there, kind of similar to what I'm trying to do with my projects and that kind of thing. And basically any person who's making anything is trying to do. They're trying to put themselves forward, and he's making a serious go of it. And I have to applaud his efforts here. He saw something that he absolutely loved. And regardless of where his career went, being a basketball player, he stuck with the thing that he loved and is now trying to put back into that. He is hiring writers and artists, and he is setting up a company and trying to make connections to put his books out there. And regardless of my opinion of Primus 7, the effort is worth it. The Exogenesis is also very much worth it. And I think that this will go forward and be more than just these books if he continues to push forward. And it seems very much that he is. I have no idea if it's going to blow up like the Boondock Saints or... Sorry, what am I thinking? Not Boondock Saints. Fuck, I can't remember the name of that show.
There was the show Boondocks. It started out as a newspaper strip and then became an animated show.
Sorry, Boondock Saints is the movie starring what's his name from The Walking Dead. But anyway,
the Boondocks.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll blow up quite that big, but there's a lot of good here, and I want to see it go much farther than these two books.
Check out Noir Caesar's books for free at noircaesar.com. Then let us know what you think. Email us at mail@deconstructingcomics.com. Tweet us at deconcomics. Like our Facebook page or join our active Facebook group. We'd also really appreciate your supporting us with a pledge at Patreon. Our tiers start at just $2 a month. Pledge at least $4 a month to get our Patreon-only series Spider-Man 1963 and Tim Catches Up with the MCU, where next weekend we'll publish our review of Avengers: Age of Ultron. Go to patreon.com/deconcomics to join the fun. Also, please help us get noticed by reviewing us on Apple or any other podcast source. Do your shopping at deconstructingcomics.com/Amazon so that we get a percentage of the sale. And share our episodes on your social media. We appreciate your support in bringing Deconstructing Comics, Critiquing Comics, and To the Bat Poles to a larger audience. Our theme is from bensound.com. If you're looking for some constructive feedback on your comic, send it to us and Mulele and I will critique it on our spin-off podcast, Critiquing Comics. Send it to mail@deconstructingcomics.com. We'll read at least 30 pages of it and critique it on the show. Mulele and I will be back with Critiquing Comics in a couple of weeks. Next week on Deconstructing Comics, Kumar and Emmett discuss the graphic novel Eileen Gray by Charlotte Malter Barth and Zosia Dzierzowska. Till then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Deconstructing Comics.